everybody. So good evening, everybody. Welcome to the July Results Grassroots Conference call. I hope you've all been enjoying the summer so far and that you're drinking lots of water in this current heat wave, particularly if it's hot where you are. It was over 30 degrees where I am today. For anybody who's on their first monthly Grassroots Conference call, big welcome to you. My name's Oxley and I'm the Executive Director of Results UK. Now, this month, we're going to be hearing about the topic of malnutrition. With a food crisis in the Horn of Africa and elsewhere around the world, and food prices rising as a result of the invasion of Ukraine, there couldn't be a more relevant time to be discussing the consequences of having an inadequate diet. Many of you on this call know a lot about this, and over the last 3 years or so, you've been campaigning very persistently on the Nutrition for Growth, or N4G processes. This evening, we'll be hearing about the practical implications of the world's current food and nutrition crisis from our special guest speaker, who I'm going to be introducing in just a few minutes. But before I get started, I'll go through the usual housekeeping messages. We are recording this call, as you would have seen, and we're going to post the recording on our website for anyone who has missed the call tonight to watch it later. So please do feel free to turn off your video if you'd rather not be in the recording. When we post up the recording, we'll also include any links or resources that have been shared in the chat box during the call. We're using automatic captions, which you can turn on or off using the Zoom menu bar. Now, some other basic housekeeping. Do please keep yourself muted during the call. And if you've got any questions or comments, jump ahead and use the chat box, and we'll try to respond to you there in real time. Otherwise, we can take to the whole call. If you're new, do please feel free to introduce yourself either by turning on your microphone and saying hello now, or you can use the chat box. We'd love to hear from you, where you're calling from, but it's also completely okay not to introduce yourself if you'd prefer to do that too. Is anyone new today? Hello.
Hi, I'm new. I'm Michelle. I'm with the Cheshire Group and I'm from Wilmslow. And it's great to be here. Hi, everybody.
Hello. Welcome to the call. Good to see you. You're joining an amazing group.
You can say to yourself. Yeah, I've heard. Yeah, Ricky told me that. I know. Yeah, thank you.
Definitely believe him. He always tells the truth.
Okay.
Anybody else want to say hi?
Hi, everyone. I'm Shilpa, and I recently came to the National Conference of Results UK in London, and then we joined the Brighton group because we are based out of Brighton right now. I'm really happy to be here for the first time and seeing familiar faces like just 2 weeks back. So, hi, everyone.
Welcome, Shilpa.
Hi, I'm Marcelo Alvarenga. I am new to this call and I'm very excited to see familiar faces, as Shilpa said, and I'm very happy to be, joining you today.
Lovely to have you with us, Marcelo. Good to see you again. And really good to see so many people that were at the National Conference. Was it last weekend, the weekend before? It was not so long ago. Well, we're going to hear more about that in just a minute. Last call for anybody wanting to say hi.
Hello. I joined the national conference as well, and now I'm here. Hello, everyone. I'm Mishika. I'm currently at the University of Sussex pursuing development studies, and so glad to meet all of you and looking forward to working together.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Very, very last call. Okay, let's jump in. If you would still like to say hello, I actually don't have the chat open. I should probably do that. 1 second so I can keep an eye on that. If you still want to say hi and haven't yet, do please say hello in the chat. You're very, very welcome. Now, as always, I'm going to start off tonight's call with a few updates on what is happening in the world that affects the work of Results. Now, first, if you're anything remotely like me, you'll have been avidly watching all the news about the leadership contest in the Conservative Party following the fall from grace of Boris Johnson. Old hands at advocacy will have seen a lot of political turmoil over the years and will understand that whatever the current intrigues are in Westminster, the work of governing the country keeps on going behind the scenes. The civil servants who keep this work happening are still there. And this means that the issues that we care about, fighting poverty and oppression, gaining people's rights to access adequate healthcare, education, and economic opportunities, these are still important issues to raise, even if they aren't at the front and center of politics or in the news tonight. We know full well that the problems in the world don't go away just because there's a leadership election or because journalists are focusing on domestic UK politics. Practically, what that means this month is that we're asking you to write to the Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, on the subject of malnutrition, when obviously this isn't her main focus right now. However, she's still in post, for now at least, and so it's important to take this action, even if we don't know whether she'll still be in that role in a few weeks' time. What we do know is that we will still have a Foreign Secretary, and it's worth remembering that while you're writing to Truss, you're also writing to one of the great offices of state that will outlast anyone who occupies the chair itself. So last Monday, at the Advocacy Day, some of you met with the FCDO nutrition team and actually met the civil servants who draft the letters in response to your campaigning. That team was very clear that getting letters from interested members of the public really matters, even though we know that, of course, the Foreign Secretary doesn't see them all personally. She does have to sign off on the policy response, and she does get to hear how much the public are engaging with the issues that her department is responsible for. So please, don't take time out this month if you're worried your letter may not have impact, because it will. And while we're on the politics, I know that everyone's going to have their own thoughts on who's the best or least worst candidate to be the next PM, depending on your point of view. But I need to remind us all that when speaking as results, we have a duty to be strictly non-partisan. So when results staff are sitting in our office, we can't comment on the internal politics of the Conservative Party. We have to work with people right across the political divide and across the whole political spectrum to gain support for our advocacy positions. And while I personally have some strong opinions, we can't let those opinions put our organizational goals at risk. That's why you won't see a lot about this on the results Twitter, for example, and I thought it'd be useful to remind folks why. And to remind you that the strictly non-partisan approach to social media and blogs also applies to any content you put out as results campaigners and if using results branding. Important one to remember. Contact the office if you've got any questions or concerns about that, because the last thing we want to do is in any way to stifle your engagement in public life. So next, I wanted to flag a really important report that was published by Parliament's International Development Committee on the 23rd of June on racism in the aid sector. This document is a very clear and welcome wake-up call to everyone involved in international development to recognise and, more importantly, take action on a lot of challenges that have been known about for a long time. The colonial roots of the relationships between so-called developed and less developed nations, the barriers faced by people of colour in gaining careers in the development sector, and the racism that people of colour face in the sector. The funding of predominantly large northern NGOs rather than locally rooted NGOs in Black majority countries, and the words and narratives that we use when we're talking about aid and international development. These interlinked issues were rightly raised by the committee, who issued challenges to both the NGOs in the sector and to the government itself. We actually think this is one of the most important reports issued by Parliament for a very long time, and I'd really urge you to engage with it. You may not have time to read the whole thing, but Results staff member Vinnie Wooding, who some of you met at the national conference, has written an excellent blog that summarises the main challenges and some of the solutions that the report sets out. We're going to put both the report and the blog post into the chat box just now. Now, Results is, like many other NGOs, grappling with some of these issues. And while we've got a lot of work to do, we've been making some good progress. You can see some of the initiatives in the About section of our website. And again, a link on that is going to appear in the chat. At the Results National Conference last weekend, we were very proud to be able to hear from a range of speakers from all around the world. And we do think that it's important to hear directly from people who have themselves experienced the issues, whether they're TB patients, climate activists, or members of a community taking action to solve the problems that they have where they are. Our role is to listen, to stand alongside them in solidarity, and when necessary, help them to raise their voices before our government. Someone we heard from at the conference was Joan Okitoy, a freelance communicator and writer who talked with us about challenging the power dynamics carried in the language and imagery we use when we describe the situation of people who are experiencing poverty and oppression. That's something else we're working on as Results, and we hope to carry on this conversation with all of you as we seek to help improve how our sector works. I really enjoyed the national conference, and it was great to be with some of you in person for the first time in over 2 years. And of course, it was great that some of you were able to join online who otherwise wouldn't be able to have been with us in London at all. So thank you all for joining us. I hope you found it interesting and thought-provoking. We'll be posting video recordings of some of the sessions onto our website quite soon. And when we do, we'll be sending around the links to that. Lastly, some of you will have seen the news last month about samples of poliovirus detected in a London sewage plant. While this is not considered a serious public health threat, it does show the need to be constantly vigilant. It underlines the importance of all the work that needs to be done to finally eradicate the disease everywhere. We'll include a link for some further reading in the chat box, which we'd highly recommend, as that there are important sensitivities when talking about polio. On polio, we welcomed the announcement made just yesterday by the UK government of £50 million for global polio eradication efforts over the next 3 years. However, those of you who have been around for a few years will know that this is actually a massive reduction on what had already been committed previously. And so while £50 million is much better than nothing, much more is needed. We're going to put a link to that announcement into the chat so that you can see the details. Now, before we hear from this month's guest speaker, it's time to hear about the advocacy you've been doing around the UK over the last month. So I'm going to hand over to Ruthie for the usual grassroots update.
Thank you, Aaron. Firstly, linked to the polio, going on from the polio news and case, I want to thank and acknowledge those of you who have continued advocacy to end polio by continuing to write letters to the FCDO. Specifically, Karen in the Cheshire group has had quite a few back and forth letters, and also Jill in Stork Valley wrote a media piece about polio and the need for the government and other governments around the world to fund and support global efforts to end the disease. And as Shona Barry said in our January conference call, when we had a polio action earlier this year, the only number that matters is 0. So we'll carry on with the focus on polio as the years go on. So also a big thank you to those of you who took the June action, which was focused on the international development strategy, and writing to the Foreign Secretary to question the priorities that were outlined in the strategy. We've seen some great letters. You've all put your own spin on it and your own priorities as well, and why perhaps the strategy was disappointing to you and didn't match with your priorities. So yeah, well done and thank you. It was a slightly different action to normal and kind of a broader look, but something that not many, if any, other campaigners would have focused on. So yeah, well done on that one. If you're interested to kind of delve more into the international development strategy from a nutrition point of view, our expert speaker tonight, Jane, recently wrote a guest blog on our site called Youth Leader for Nutrition's View on the UK's International Development Strategy, which, as the title suggests, she shared her view on the International Development Strategy from the point of view of nutrition, specifically adolescent nutrition, and what the UK should be doing. So it's a really informative blog and links last month's action to this month's action nicely. So if you get a chance to read that, I'd recommend it. Now, to echo what Aaron said, thank you to everyone who came to the national conference. We had a really great range of speakers and sessions, and it was lovely to meet people for the first time in London, and also see familiar faces and new faces online and in London as well. So I hope you all enjoyed it, and we'll get the recordings up and resources up as soon as possible. So if you couldn't attend, you'll be able to catch up. If you want to watch them again, as Aaron said, that will be there for you soon. Just a final plug that if you did attend but haven't already, please do take a few minutes to give us some feedback. It really helps us shape how we plan for the year, for next year's conference, and reflect on how it went this year. So would anyone who came to the conference like to say anything about how they found it, or kind of a memory that they have from the weekend? This is a pre-planned throwing it out there. Floor's open.
Well, Sanjay's taken us off mute up in Cheshire, so I feel like we have to say something now, don't we, Karen?
Yeah.
It was deeply inspiring and brilliant. And for me, one of the best things was that there were so many guest speakers and they were from all over the globe, which is so important, isn't it? So I don't think I've heard a guest speaker from Mongolia for a long time. So that was great. So really good, really well done, really helpful for us supporters. So thank you.
Thank you, Ricky. And yeah, we had a very, very global mix of speakers, which was great. Would anyone else like to jump in? Can't see anyone. So we also, following the conference, as Aaron mentioned, had the advocacy day where we spoke to nutrition, well, civil servants focusing on nutrition in the FCDO. We also spoke to civil servants working on the Global Fund and like global health issues, and had 2 MP meetings with Chris Matheson and Julie Marson about education and health and the official development assistance budget. So yeah, thanks to everyone who came. We can't share, I won't start trying to summarize those meetings because, as you can imagine, a lot was said, some things that civil servants would prefer not to be said elsewhere. But yeah, they were really informative and have kind of helped us with this month's action and also our advocacy in general. And I can see Richard has his hands up. So
just say I'm very guilty and party that I haven't been active for a long time in results, but I have never, I don't think, missed an annual conference, and this was as good, if not better, than all the others. So much work goes into it, and the advocacy day, it's amazing. Thank you. I try to persuade more people to come because, you know, it's such a wonderful opportunity to learn so much. But anyway, thank you very much. It was very good.
Thank you, Richard. I'm glad you could come, and I'll employ you as our chief marketer of the conference next year. No, it was really good. It's really nice to hear that you enjoyed it as well. Would anyone else like to share any thoughts if you were at the advocacy day or the conference? Marcelo?
Hi again, everybody. I just wanted to follow up what Richard was saying. To me, it was my first conference, and I learned so much from all leaders across the UK. And to me, that was the beauty of the gathering, just hearing from real grassroots advocates who are so committed with results, vision, and also to the goals of the global goals, and how the UK should commit more to support the cause. And the action day, to me, was also another highlight. We were able to, just within our groups, to be able to coordinate and to have that conversation with MPs and people who are at the forefront of all these offices in government. It's been my first experience here in the UK. As I've told some of you personally, I've been looking forward to this opportunity to engage more in policymaking processes here. I've been doing what we did on the day during the conference and the action day on Monday. I've been doing that in another part of the world, which is Latin America, where I used to work. And I was so thrilled with how Results had thought about all these activities. And it takes a lot of organizing to do. And therefore, it is my duty to say thank you to everybody who contributed to organizing this particular conference. I thought it was hands down, and I am very, very happy that I'm able to connect with minded and committed people like all of you, and I look forward to continue supporting Results and have more of my time advocating.
Thank you very much, Marcelo, and great that you could join us and join tonight as well. Look forward to future events with everyone. Yeah, so I always feel like it's an awkward switch from reminiscing fondly about an event to something different, but equally exciting is that the Cheshire group have been live on the local radio with a audio note recorded. I believe it was Ricky, and it's really we're going to make it into a video so we can share it on social media and share it with you. But it's really inspiring, and I hope that Ricky's engaging message and voice will encourage others to get involved and find out about the group and about our advocacy. But I just thought that was such a creative way of reaching out to people. And yeah, we might have the next big radio voice actor on the call. So watch this space. That's everything from me. So back to you, Aaron. Thanks everyone who contributed as well.
Thanks, Ruthie, and thanks everybody. It's really great to be riding on such a groundswell of energy. It is one of the best times of year, the conference. I'm really glad we're staying in action. So let's move on to the topic of tonight's conversation, which is to hear more about the reality of poor nutrition and some of the challenges that need to be overcome if people are able to be accessing their rights to good health and adequate nutrition. It's really my absolute pleasure to welcome our guest speaker tonight, who's Jane Napais Lankisa, a global youth leader for nutrition with the Scaling Up Nutrition Youth Leaders Program. Her work revolves around nutrition advocacy with a specific interest in adolescent nutrition. She's based in Kenya, where she's calling in from tonight, and there she champions for optimum nutrition amongst young people and children. And I noticed that Naveed has shared her bio in the chat. So Jane, welcome to you. Hello.
Hello.
It's really good.
Everyone.
It's really good to see you, and thank you so much for staying up late to speak with us. It's quite late in Kenya, and so we really appreciate the effort.
Thank you.
Let me explain let me start by explaining who we've got on this call. You've been on for a few minutes, so you've heard a little bit of what the people here are up to, but you're joining volunteer campaigners from all around the UK, from all the way up in Scotland to right down on the south coast of the country. They regularly are taking advocacy actions, mostly aimed at the UK government, to try to persuade the UK government to prioritise international development programmes that tackle poverty and injustice, particularly around access to health and education. Some of the people on this call have been working on these issues for many years, but we also have some people joining us tonight who are very new to international development, don't know all of our jargon, and are coming to this with fresh eyes. So we're going to be asking 3 pre-prepared questions for you, but as we normally do. But before we ask those, I'm going to ask you my favorite question, which is that if you could share a little bit about your background, your current role, and what was it that motivated you to get involved with nutrition advocacy?
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Like I've mentioned, my name is Jane Napais. Working at Feed the Children as a nutritionist. And my work at Feed the Children is mostly working with women of reproductive age, that is 15 to 49 years. And during this meeting, we educate about the behavior change, about nutrition in terms of what you eat, and also in terms of hygiene. And alongside my work at Feed the Children, that's where I started off my campaign, that is Scaling Up Adolescent Nutrition. And thanks to Sun Civil Society Network, I was able to start off my campaign targeting the adolescent. The reason why I focused on adolescent is because part of my work, daily activity working with the community, I noticed there's a gap among these girls, the adolescent, especially in my community. I belong to Maasai community. So you find that the moment these adolescents get pregnant, they're being forced to get married. And then you see that their education has stopped, considering that adolescent is young and then she's a mother, there's that issue of bringing the aspect of nutrition, the malnutrition, because it's the intergeneration cycle of malnutrition. So for me, I felt like I need to focus more on this group because a lot of information is left behind because they're not able to receive this information more about nutrition. So that's why I started off my campaign to be able to help these adolescent girls. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Jane. It's always really inspiring to hear what motivates people to do the work that we do. So thank you so much for sharing that. Let's jump straight over to the first question that we have for you before we open up the floor to people on the call. While we do that, if anybody prefers to text in a question tonight, if maybe you can't reach the keyboard on the computer, feel free to text something in. The number tonight we'll be putting in the chat, but it's 0777 56 111 78. I'll say that again. That's 0777 56 11178. So get your questions going in the chat and feel free to text some in. But let's go to the first question we have for Jane this evening, which should be from Brighton. Do we have somebody from Brighton to ask the question?
Hi, yeah, I'm from the Brighton group. I'm Amy, and the first question is, what is the current state of nutrition in Kenya, and are you seeing things get worse because of the food crisis?
Okay, thank you so much for the question. Maybe to start off from what we see in globally, that is 690 million are undernourished according to the World Hunger. If I speak about undernutrition, I mean that that person, either a child or a grown-up, is not able to get enough nutrients. And you see that the prevalence of these undernourished people have jumped to 9.8 by 2021. And in Kenya, through September, that is 2022, at least 1 in 5 households will be unable to meet their minimum food needs with this crisis. I can share my experience now that you find that in terms of the food prices, even for my side, I feel like I've been affected. So you see that people are making wrong choices from my view, because you feel like you don't have that enough money to be able to buy food that is nutritious food. So for me, I feel like things are getting worse in terms of food crisis. And as we are going back to 2030, trying to achieve ending malnutrition in all its forms by 2030, I feel like we are going to be way behind in terms of what is really going on in our country. And as I say, that food security is one of the underlying causes of malnutrition. Not every household is able to access this food. Considering that people are able to lose job because of this pandemic, I feel like not like what I work in my community. You for example, you can be able to tell a mother you should eat this, but I'm not able to provide that food. So there's that gap. We have this information, but we are not able to provide that food security to that household. So, like I've just said, the current situation for me, I don't think we're on the right track, and it's going to get worse than the way it is now. Yeah.
Thanks
I hope I was able to answer your question.
Thanks, Jane. I was just about to say that's a very sobering statistic. 1 in 5 households in Kenya. That is a very, very difficult figure to hear. Let's jump over to Paul for the next question.
Hello, sorry, I had to unmute. Yeah, this is question 2. Our government says that it is prioritising the rights of women and girls, but what is needed to ensure that women and girls are prioritised in nutrition programmes?
Thank you for your question. First of all, I love to congratulate the government, because way back we said that women are left behind, and it's good to prioritize on the women and girls. But as a means of, like what I've mentioned about the issue of reducing the intergeneration cycle of malnutrition, nutrition interventions such as the sexual reproductive health services, and also micronutrient supplementation, nutrition intervention for pregnant adolescents, to be able to improve. Sorry, Aaron, can you confirm you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine. Yeah, we've
Okay.
got thumbs up from other people on the call. Yeah.
Okay. For me, also the issue about nutrition intervention for pregnant adolescents should be given top priority by the UK government in the international development work, because you see that as much focus, even though we empower these people with education, nutrition cuts across everything. So I feel like there's need to be able to ensure that these nutrition interventions are being catered for in this strategy. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. There was a long list that you gave us there of the specific nutrition interventions that are relevant to women and girls. I think maybe we can come back to some of those as we get through some of the questions, because I think they are, I know what a few of them are, and I think it would be great to hear a bit more about the details as we go on. But let's go across to London for the third question before we come back to any of that.
Hello. My question is, what can we do here in the UK to support your work in improving nutrition?
Thank you for your question. One of the global nutrition targets 2025 is to improve the maternal, infant, and young child nutrition. And my nutrition advocacy focuses on adolescents, who are the missing link in the fight against malnutrition. Adolescent is the second window of opportunity. Apart from what we say that children below 2 years, that stage is the window of opportunity. For me, I feel like adolescent is also the second window of opportunity to be able to address the malnutrition, which presents that triple benefit in their health now, in their adult's life, and the life of their children. And it's my plea that financial support and expertise to be able to support my noble cause, because part of my major gap, if I mention for my campaign, is the resources. As much as I educate this adolescent out of school and in school, you find that they are not able to have that materials left behind for them. And in terms of finance, in terms of expertise, I feel like there's need to be able to engage more with other stakeholders to learn more of what they're doing about the adolescent. I feel like if we do all together in terms of all the sectors, I prefer saying multi-sector approach, bringing all sectors on board. Apart from nutrition, we can say about health and water, agriculture. They all come on board to be able to help this noble cause so that you can be able to help these adolescents. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. What a wonderful tour of what is a very broad field with those three answers. Really great opening answers, and really have given us a great idea of some of the ways in which the world needs to tackle malnutrition through programs in countries and through advocacy. I'm going to open the floor now to whoever would like to ask a question. Can I just ask that folks would introduce themselves before they ask their question? I don't see any questions in the chat, so I'm going to ask if anybody wants to unmute and ask a question, and if nobody jumps in, I'm going to use my chair's prerogative to ask one, but I'm going to open the floor to you all first. Who wants to jump in? Oh, everybody's very shy. How unlike you all. I'm going to do that then. I'm going to ask the first question. So Jane, you talked when we were answering question 2, when we were talking about what is it that is needed to ensure that women and girls are prioritized in nutrition programs. You talked about a number of quite specific different things that nutrition programs can do for women and girls. Can you maybe pick one of those and tell us what it's like to actually deliver that where you are? Like, what does it mean very practically for you to be delivering that intervention? Where does it happen? Who does it happen with? How often does it happen? What does it look like? Now, none of us are in Kenya. We have no idea what's actually, what it means to be doing this work. And we'd love to get your perspective on that.
Okay, thank you for your question. Maybe if I understand you well, from my work, what we usually do every month to be able to educate these women of reproductive age. if I maybe I can share an example about what we food security or food insecurity. There's this situation where we focus more on women to be able to eat healthy diet. You should eat this food rich in vitamin A, food rich in proteins, because it's going to help your body. When you speak with the girls, because they are going through menstruation, you tell them that you should eat food rich in iron, like liver, kales. But we're forgetting that when they go back home, there are other people who they're the ones who are the responsible ones. Like they have the money to be able to buy food. They're the household head. We call them men are the household head in the community. So that there is that gap. As much as we focus on supporting these women, there's the need to be able to bring those men on board, because they're the ones who are providing food to the family. So from my side, when we noticed this gap, we brought the men on board to be able to share with them about nutrition, what is good for your body. As much as we are saying you should eat well, you need to tell someone that you should eat healthy, so that you can be able to have good nutrition status. Because even if we eat good and then you overeat, that is overnutrition, and that brings the aspect of obesity. And also if you go for undernutrition, that brings the issue of malnutrition, and it makes that person to be weak. And also in terms of performance, if you go back to the adolescent, they're not going to perform well. So for me, I feel like there's still gap. Even though we are supporting these women and girls, we should bring the aspect of other people in that household, so that they can be able to have this nutrition information, and also support, so that you can be able to be all on board to be able to fight malnutrition. Thank you. I hope I was able to answer your question.
No, Jane, yes, absolutely. I think I think it's very easy to think, oh yeah, we just speak to the women and the girls, and to not make the connection that there is a power relationship and a power dynamic in the family and in the community. That means we need to extend efforts more broadly. And I think that's a very powerful example of the work and practice. Thank you for sharing that. Do we have any more questions for Jane? Does somebody want to jump in? I see Helen and Reg are off mute. Is that you're about to? No, you are on mute. Sorry, I'm misreading the screen. I see Cheshire.
Yeah. So Jane, thank you for what you were saying earlier. Well, your answer to that last question. So it seems like, as well as a food intervention, i.e. somebody has to deliver food to this, an area where people suffer malnutrition, there's a large element of education. So you want to provide food, but avoid kind of overnutrition, and also treat undernutrition, and kind of get that whole philosophy embedded in the local culture. So how important is the kind of educational side relative to the actual food side of the nutrition program?
Sorry, I didn't get your last point about the nutrition program.
Yeah, so what's the relative importance of the food versus the education in a nutrition program? It's Ricky from Cheshire, by the way.
Okay, thank you so much. Maybe I can share an example. In where I live, or in the county I'm staying, in Maasai community, you find that we have a lot of milk and meat. And you find that milk and meat are in the same, we can say food, they're both proteins. So people assume, because I already have food, I can eat and I'm okay. But you see that that person is not able to achieve the full nutrient value in their body, because you have just eaten protein. So as much as you have that food, if they're being provided for, they need to have that food diversity to be able to learn that I can also eat food rich in vitamin A, because it's going to help me in my body. And as much as we're trying, we usually educate people that you should eat at least out of the 10 food groups, vitamin A, food rich in vitamin A, dark green leafy vegetables, legumes. So we tend to educate these people to be able to know if your food, at least try to practice or to embrace different variety of food, because it's going to be able to help your body. There's that issue of eating just one type of food. It's going to bring the issue of malnutrition. That is called kwashiorkor, because you're just eating the same thing over and over again. So it's important to be able to embrace different types of food groups so that you can be able to have that correct nutrient value in your body. Yeah. So education is, first of all, important to be able to learn how this food play in your body. Yeah, how it works.
That's interesting. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Oh, I see William and Elizabeth Ross have their line off mute as well.
Yeah, we do hear about the crisis rising out of the situation in Ukraine. Can you tell us how you are reacting personally and how it is, how widespread it is, how widespread the fear is in your country and elsewhere in East or Central Africa, please?
Thank you, William, for your question. For me in Kenya, on my side, a lot of things has changed. In terms of pocket-wise, to be able to buy these food items, it's quite a challenge. You find that trying to balance, like even if I'm a nutritionist, you find yourself that you're not practicing good nutrition because the situation that is in the country. The issue of food prices is still increasing every now and then. The fuel, also the time, the distance in which you're going to get these food items is a challenge, because you tell yourself that I can just buy food that is near me, because if I go far, then I'm going to spend extra money to be able to go and look for that food. So personally, on my side, I feel like it has really affected me on my side. And also in Kenya general, I can see other people are complaining in terms of getting access to this food. And I love the idea of how people, especially the rural area, they are trying to embrace the issue of kitchen garden so that they can be able to have access to fresh foods like the vegetables. That is the only way of coping with this strategy, because you find that you don't have that enough capital to be able to buy this food. Yeah. So it's a challenge.
Jane, can you, I mean, I think that's incredibly insightful. I think one of the things that many people forget is that sometimes the travel to find the food can be a huge barrier in actually accessing. You know, we are very spoiled in Britain. There's lots of food all over the place, very easy to reach most of the time. But I remember, you know, even for people in the UK, food that you travel short distances for is sometimes much more expensive than food that you can travel long distances for to a big supermarket or something which is further away. And it's I mean, perhaps not surprising that similar issues are the same all around the world. You mentioned, though, kitchen gardens, the concept of kitchen gardens. Can you talk to us a little bit about what those are and what those can mean to households?
Okay, in terms of kitchen garden, when people usually use a simple, just a small piece of land outside beside their house, so that they can be established a small area, especially near the kitchen, where they put vegetables. We call it spinach or kales, where they plant it. So you find that there's a challenge of water, but because there's kitchen near, they can use the available water there. And they can, apart from using the land, they can use the sack so that they can be able to plant those kales. So that was the easiest way to be able to have that access to fresh vegetables, because you find yourself that by the time especially during COVID, there was the time that there was lockdown. So you find yourself that food cannot be transported to another county. So that was quite a challenge. That's where people started embracing the issue of kitchen garden so that they can be able to have access to fresh vegetables so that they can be able to consume. Yeah.
Thanks, Jane. That's really, again, very real life example of how this kind of work and these opportunities can play out in practice. We've got a question from Mark that's come through the chat. Mark, do you want to ask that yourself, or would you like me to read that out for you?
Yeah, I can ask that, Aaron. Yes. Yeah. Good evening, Jane. Thank you for your fantastic work that you're doing there in Kenya. My question is, within the Kenyan government, are there women in ministerial roles to support and advocate for scaling up nutrition in women's and girls?
Thank you, Mark. Maybe I can share, like now we are heading to elections, and for the first time we're having a running mate, a woman as a vice president. Hopefully, I hope she's going to be selected. In terms of ministerial roles, maybe I can share the Scaling Up Nutrition Civil Society Alliance in Kenya. We have a Sun Focal Point, who is a woman, and I can say she's supporting my campaign. So I feel like she's advocating for scaling up nutrition in women and girls. And also we have, we have women representatives from different counties who are able to support these girls in terms of sexual reproductive health. They provide the sanitary towels for the girls. And also there's that issue of female genital mutilation that is where Kenya is able to pass a law that it's against the law to be able to do this. So there's still women who are playing a very big role in able to support these women and girls. So there is.
Thanks, Jane. Yeah, we need more women in charge of things. That is absolutely for sure. Very much the case. We have only 10 minutes left. Do we have any more questions for Jane?
May I just come in again, please?
Go ahead, William.
Yes. We hear of at least 3 years of drought, and I'm just wondering how productive your kitchen gardens are.
Okay, that is true. Last year, it was last year, yeah. Last year we were able to establish around 10 kitchen gardens, but when we come back to this year, we find that the same people say that we didn't have access to water. So you find that that land is already dry. So we tried to be able to try different ways, like using the sack. There's a way the sack can be able to absorb water without drying too fast, as compared to using the land. Also, there's this, we tried, maybe I can share what we did last month. We tried to plant a pumpkin, because pumpkin, you can just use water before once, and then when it dries off, you can refill another water. You can put another water there before it dries again. So we try to educate these people to try to learn the vegetables that can be able to survive well in dry lands. As much that we are being affected with lack of water in the areas, because you find that people are buying water. So you can see a scenario where a mother is saying that, how can I buy water to pour in the farm and I don't even have water to consume? So it's a gap, which is really a problem, because you find that you are focusing more to be able to provide these vegetables, but they're not able to be able to make it continuous or progressive because of that issue of lack of water. But we are trying to learn different types of food that they can be able to plant during this dry period. So for me, we tried pumpkin, and I'm hoping that it's going to work well, because even for me, it was a challenge. I tried kitchen garden, and then with a mother, actually we planted well with her, and then after that was last month, I went and visited her and the land was dry. She told me that she didn't have enough water. So we tried another method. So hopefully, if we get another chance to communicate, I can share with you the feedback or the updates, whether it worked well.
Thanks, Jane. Yeah, we're wishing that all the best for the garden. Do we any more questions? If not, I've got another one, if that's okay. Okay, so Jane, maybe could we go back maybe a little bit to your answer to the very first question? I mean, I think, you know, you've given us, I think, an absolutely crucial set of insights into what it means on the ground to get women and girls access to better nutrition, you know, from growing vegetables to access to different kinds of foods, to education, to understanding the power dynamics in communities and households. But I think it's, you know, as we approach the end of the call, I think it's really important that we go back a little bit to some of the big picture numbers. When you were talking about 1 in 5 Kenyan households, when you were talking about some of the big picture impacts to food security in the country, the implications of the global food crisis, you know, can you take us back to that space and maybe talk a little bit more about what that means for Kenya, what that means for communities, what that means for the region, and what that could mean for the world, given some of the really, you know, the very big numbers of people that are currently experiencing malnutrition and that are at risk of falling into malnourished status because of world affairs.
For me, I feel if you're talking about the Sustainable Development Goals, and one of our main objective is to end malnutrition in all its forms by 2030. I feel like COVID-19 and also this crisis that we are going on through in terms of food crisis, the high prices in terms of fuel, food, I feel like it's dragging us way behind, and I don't think we are going to be able to achieve this objective by 2030 if we don't all come on board to be able to ensure that people are preaching nutrition and practicing nutrition. As much as we are trying to focus more on food crisis, we need also to find best way to be able to ensure that we help these people to, in terms of having access to this food, they can be able to provide for themselves, like just like going back to having kitchen garden. I think it's a best way to be able to support this community to be able to provide this food at their country or in their community, to be able to cope with this strategy, because you never know what might come in a few months or next year. So it is more of preparedness from my side. I feel like I've learned a lot of lessons during COVID and now. So for me, it's more of country to be able to prepare themselves on how to be able to fight this food crisis. How is the country, when there's the lockdown, whether it's coming or another country is not going to provide something else in another country. I think it's more of each country be able to prepare themselves and to know whether they're on track to be able to achieve the goals that we all set to be able to achieve. Yeah.
Thanks, Jane. That's it. Please.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I was trying to mention every country have different objectives. Like what we have, that is the, how do I say it? Oh, I'm even lost in words, sorry. Every country has their nutrition action plan. So for me, I feel like we need to have support from different sectors so that they can be able to support them in achieving this nutrition action plan. Because what can work in my country, in my county, that is Kajiado, cannot work in the Nairobi city. Because you find that Nairobi is already a city and does not provide enough land to be able to plant these vegetables. So there's something can be done in the area I'm staying, because in my community, you find that people are focusing more on proteins. They're not knowledgeable of other types of food. So I feel like it's all more of multi-sectorial approach so that you can bring all partners on board to be able to support all the nutrition strategy, nutrition plans that we are able to carry out in our countries. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. That's actually a really powerful note to end on, and the multi-sector nature of the response that's needed. And I think the importance of countries' own plans and the support that can be provided to help them achieve those plans. The specificity of what is needed in different communities is incredibly, incredibly important. I think that's a really great segue into some of the closing remarks I have for tonight. So if you'll bear with me, I'll just try and do a little bit of a wrap up. But before I do that, Jane, I do want to say a huge thank you to you for joining us this evening. I know it's quite late in the evening for you now. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
For everybody else, I really hope that you're going to you're feeling very inspired to take this month's action. And as a reminder, what we're doing tonight is writing to the current Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, to commit to reaching 50 million women and girls with nutrition relevant programs within the next 5 years. That is the target. That is the goal. That is what we need the UK government to committing to do. Now, this is a target that the old Department for International Development committed to, and they actually exceeded that over the last 5-year period. But as you'll know, that if you've been following along with the nutrition work, that commitment has not been renewed, and we desperately need it to be. I think, in terms of the multi-sector nature, in terms of the challenges faced by the current food crisis, I think the fact that we have a foreign and development office together creates potentially some very interesting opportunities for us to do more and do better and to get that commitment. So good luck to everybody with your letters. And as a reminder that even though Liz Truss has a lot on her mind right now that is not her actual portfolio, she will need to deal with this issue. And we know that her department is actively trying to work across different thematic program areas, the kinds of things that Jane was talking about, to deliver nutrition programs in new ways. So now really is a great time to be setting a new level of ambition for this work. Goodbye to everybody for now. Thank you so much to everybody for joining us today, for making sure that you came a little bit earlier so you could hear Jane speak. Thank you again to Jane for joining us this evening. So insightful and so inspiring. We really hope that our government can do our part in supporting nutrition around the world. I look forward to seeing you all again at the next Grassroots conference call, which is going to be on Tuesday, the 2nd of August, and back at the usual time of 8 p.m. UK. That's all for me from now. Please enjoy the rest of your evenings, and looking forward to hearing how your actions go. Thanks again, and good night.
Bye.
Thanks, Aaron. Bye.
Thanks, Jane. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Good night. Cheers.
Bye. Good night.
Good night, Jane. Thank you.